The morning Sarah Holt knocked on my door asking for help with boxes, I had motor oil on my hands, a half-eaten breakfast on the counter, and no idea the next 4 hours were going to change the next 4 years. It was a Saturday. Late October. Cold enough that your breath showed but not cold enough to make excuses about. I had been under my truck since 7, chasing a rattle I had been ignoring since September. I heard the knock from the driveway. 3 times. Polite but not soft. I wiped my hands on a rag and answered it. Sarah lived 4 houses down. The brick one with the green door and the porch swing nobody ever sat on. I knew her the way you know people on a quiet street. Face, name, a nod at the mailbox, a wave from the driveway. Her husband, Paul, was louder than she was. He was the kind of man who laughed at his own jokes before he finished telling them and made every neighborhood barbecue feel slightly more exhausting than it needed to be. Sarah was different, quieter, composed in a way that could read as distant until you paid closer attention. She stood at my door with her coat buttoned up and her hands clasped in front of her. "Nate," she said, "I need a favor and I completely understand if you can't." That sentence told me everything. She had already rehearsed the refusal. She had already made room for no. I said yes before she finished explaining. She needed to move a storage unit. Her car was too small, her sister was 2 states away, and Paul was, she paused there just long enough, unavailable. That pause did more work than she intended. I pulled my truck around. She came out of her house with 2 reusable bags and a thermos of coffee she handed through the passenger window without asking if I wanted any. That detail stuck. Not pushy. Not performing thoughtfulness. Just a woman who noticed things and acted on them quietly. We drove mostly without talking. Not the awkward kind of quiet. The kind where neither person feels required to fill it. At the first light she said, "I really appreciate this." I told her it was a Saturday and I had been arguing with a truck rattle for 2 hours and she was doing me a favor. She looked at me like she was deciding whether that was true or just kindness dressed up as practicality. "Both?" I said, though she hadn't asked. That almost made her smile. The storage unit was on the east side of town in one of those facilities with orange roll doors and fluorescent lights that make everything look slightly worse than it is. Sarah typed in the code without hesitating, which told me she had been here before. Then she stood at the open door for a moment without stepping inside. The unit was packed careful. Boxes labeled in neat handwriting. A lamp with a shade still on it. A bookcase lying flat with its shelves stacked beside it. A rocking chair with a throw blanket folded on the seat like someone had expected to come back for it sooner. She stepped in slowly. Touched the top of one box. "These were from my apartment," she said. "Before I got married." I looked at the labels. Kitchen things. Art supplies. "I kept meaning to integrate everything," she said. "Into the house. Our house." She stopped. "I just never did." I picked up the first box and carried it to the truck without answering. Not because I did not have anything to say. Because sometimes the right response to a true thing is just to keep moving so the other person can keep breathing. We loaded for about 90 minutes. She stopped calling things heavy when they were heavy and started just picking them up. By the second trip she was matching me box for box on the smaller things and directing the furniture with the calm authority of someone who had spent a lot of years knowing exactly where everything should go and not always getting to decide. On the drive back she talked more. She had grown up in this town, left for college, came back because Paul's job was here and she had told herself that geography was not the same as identity and believed it for longer than was good for her. She had a degree in graphic design that she used part-time for a small studio downtown, the kind of work she kept at a reasonable size because Paul thought too much ambition on her part made the household complicated. She said that without bitterness. Just fact. The kind of fact you have already argued with yourself so many times that the anger has gone flat. "I don't say any of that to make him sound like a villain," she said. "You didn't," I said. She looked out the window. "He's not. He's just," she turned the thermos cap in both hands. "Well, he makes everything around him a little smaller. And I let him because it was easier than fighting about it every day." I kept my eyes on the road. "You're easy to say things to," she said. "You're doing the saying," I told her. "I'm just driving." "That's what makes it easy," she said. We unloaded everything into her garage. She had already cleared a section, which meant she had been planning this longer than a morning. The bookcase went against the back wall. The boxes stacked by size. The rocking chair in the corner like it had always been there. When the last thing was in, she stood in the middle of the garage looking at it all. "I'm putting together the back room," she said. "The one Paul uses for storage." She paused. "He moved out 3 weeks ago." I looked at her. She looked at the rocking chair. "He didn't leave because of anything dramatic," she said. "He left because when I finally asked him directly whether he was happy, he said he didn't really think about it. And I realized I had been thinking about nothing else for 2 years." The garage was cold. Wind moved under the door at the bottom edge and lifted a piece of packing paper off a box. "I'm sorry," I said, because she deserved to hear it even if it was not the whole response. "Thank you," she said. "I'm too. And also not. Both things at once." I nodded. That was the most honest answer to a situation like hers, and she knew it and I knew it, and neither of us needed to discuss it further. She looked at me. "Will you help me put the bookcase together?" Inside. I thought about the truck rattle, the half-eaten breakfast, the empty Saturday stretching out behind me. "Show me where it's going," I said. The back room was small with one window that looked out on the yard and walls that had been used for Paul's boxes and unused exercise equipment and nothing that suggested a person lived there by choice. Sarah had already cleared it, swept it, hung a curtain she must have bought recently because the tag was still visible on one edge. We built the bookcase in about an hour. She held the pieces while I drove the screws. She changed her mind twice about which wall, and I moved it twice without comment because it was her room and she got to decide where things went in her own room. When it was standing, she filled it immediately. Books from the boxes she had brought from storage. She organized them by color, not title. I mentioned that seemed impractical. She gave me a look. "It's a bookcase. Practical isn't what it's for." I put the screwdriver down. "Fair." She slid a red book next to an orange one and stood back and looked at it. Something in her face settled. Not happiness exactly. More like recognition. Like she was seeing a version of herself she had not visited in a while, and it was still there. Paul thought organizing things by color was the kind of nonsense people did when they had too much time, she said. "Paul's not here," I said. She turned and looked at me. Just for a second. Then she turned back to the bookcase. "No," she said. "He isn't." She made lunch. She did not ask if I wanted to stay. She just said she was making soup and I should eat before I drove back, and she said it the way someone says a thing when they know the answer and are not interested in performing the question. We ate at the kitchen table, not the dining room. She said the dining room was for occasions and this was just a Tuesday. It was Saturday, but I understood what she meant. The soup was good. The kind that takes longer than lunch requires. Which meant she had made it that morning before she knocked on my door, which meant she had already planned that someone would be here to share it. I did not say that out loud. We talked through lunch and then through the dishes, and then she made coffee and we took it to the back room and sat on the floor with our backs against the wall because the only chair was the rocking chair and it felt too good to waste on just one person. She told me about the graphic design work she had been letting shrink. A logo commission she had turned down because Paul thought the timeline would be inconvenient for their schedule. A branding project she had wanted to pitch for and hadn't. I talked myself out of things so often I stopped noticing it was a choice, she said. I held my mug. Looked at the bookcase. "You going to go back after it now?" She considered that seriously. "I think I'm going to let myself want to first. I forgot how to want things. I've been managing things so long." That was one of the truest sentences I had heard in a while. She looked at me then. "What about you? You've been letting me talk for 4 hours." So I talked about my own marriage 10 years earlier, which had ended the way some marriages end, not with a single event but with the accumulated weight of two people slowly becoming strangers while being too polite to say so. About the 3 years since then that had been quiet in a way that was sometimes peace and sometimes just absence. About the truck I had been rebuilding because having something broken to fix kept the Saturdays from feeling too long. She listened the way she had listened from the truck. Fully. Without waiting to respond. "You seem like a man who got very good at being alone," she said, without ever deciding that's what he wanted. That hit somewhere uncomfortable. Not because it was unkind. Because it was accurate. Maybe, I said. That's not a maybe, she said softly. I looked at her. She looked at the bookcase. The light through the one window had gone gold and low. Late afternoon. We had been in this room for 2 hours without noticing. I should have left. I had run out of practical reasons to stay. The bookcase was built. The lunch was done. The coffee was cold. I stood up, got my jacket from the kitchen chair. She walked me to the door. I stepped onto the porch. Cold air. The street quiet. Her green door warm-lit behind me. I turned to say goodbye. She was standing just inside the threshold. One hand on the doorframe. Looking at me with an expression that was not trying to be anything other than what it was. Stay a little longer, she said. Quiet. Steady. Entirely honest. I stood there in the cold for a long second. She did not move. Did not fill the silence with an explanation or an apology or a joke to make it easier to say no. I know it's complicated, she said. I'm not pretending it isn't. I'm just done saying things smaller than I mean them. The street behind me was the same street. Same houses, same bare trees, same October light going out at the edges. I thought about the bookcase she had built around herself today. The room she had reclaimed. The soup made in the morning before she had knocked. The way she listened. The way she said true things plainly. I thought about long Saturdays and empty kitchens and getting good at alone without ever choosing it. I stepped back inside. We sat on the back porch with blankets and the last of the coffee until the cold finally won around 9 o'clock. We talked about books and bad apartments and the particular freedom of being an adult who finally lets themselves organize a bookcase by color. Small things. True things. Nothing happened that should not have happened. I want to say that clearly. Not because there was no feeling in the room. There was. But we were both people who had made choices in the past without enough thought, and we were old enough to know the difference between an honest moment and a reason to rush. When I finally said goodnight, she walked me to the door again. Thank you, she said. For the boxes and the bookcase and all of it. The soup was better, I said. She smiled. A real one. The kind that reached everything. I went home. Sat in my kitchen with the lights off for a while. The truck was still in the driveway. The rattle still unresolved. The breakfast plates still on the counter. But something in the house felt different. Not louder. Just less empty than it had been that morning. The weeks after that were careful. Honest. She was still in the middle of something that took time to finish. I did not treat that as nothing. Some lines mean what they mean regardless of how complicated the circumstances around them are. But we were neighbors. We talked across the fence. She brought coffee once when she saw my truck. I helped her carry in groceries one evening when it was raining without her having to ask. She finished the back room. Sent me a picture of the bookcase with morning light on it and a message that said only, "It's right." I kept that message longer than necessary. Paul came by once to get the last of his things. I saw his truck from my driveway. Did not interfere. Did not look for a reason to be nearby. It was not my moment. It was hers. She texted that evening. Just, okay. I wrote back, good. Whole conversation. Enough. 3 months later she asked if I wanted to get dinner. Not as a favor. Not as gratitude. She said it the way she said everything, directly, without decorating it with hedges. I'd like to have dinner with you, she said. On purpose. If you want that too. I want that too, I said. We went somewhere small and good. She wore a dark blue sweater. She arrived before me, which I learned was just how she was, the kind of person who did not make other people wait for her. We talked for 3 hours. Walked for an hour after. She took my arm somewhere near the end of the second block, easy and unhurried, like she had thought about it and then decided thinking was not required. At her car she looked at me. I forgot what it felt like, she said, to be around someone who does not make me feel like I'm taking up too much space. I thought about what she had told me in the truck. The work she had let get smaller. The questions she had stopped asking. The rocking chair in storage with a blanket on it like someone expected to be back. You're not, I said. Not even close. She touched my arm once. Got in her car. I walked home under bare October trees and thought about how things begin. Not with grand events. Not with the moments people plan. With a knock on a door on a cold Saturday. With a thermos of coffee through a truck window. With 3 quiet words on a porch and someone brave enough to mean them. The rocking chair is in her living room now. The back room she built for herself became the room she is proudest of in the house. She took the branding project. And the one after it. And me? I fixed the truck rattle. It was a loose heat shield. Took 20 minutes once I stopped ignoring it. Some things are simpler than you make them. Others take exactly as long as they take. The bookcase is still organized by color. She was right about that from the beginning. If someone stood at their own door and asked you honestly to stay a little longer, and you knew what they really meant, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments. If this one meant something, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.